Welcome back to Planet Zoom. Welcome back to Zoom Midwest finally. I want to start off by apologizing for the long gap between the first video and the second video here. That was definitely not intended. It's going to happen sometimes. My work is, well, it is what it is. I am on call 24/7, 365. I can't always predict when I'm going to have to put hobbies and things aside for work, and sometimes I just don't have the energy to jump in and try to do a recording like this if I've had a lot of work that day. I don't work 8 or 9 hour days, I'll tell you that, and I don't have an on and off season. Every season's the on season, and any time of the day can be the time I have to work. It's just part of the nature of what I do, which we won't go into. You know, some people know kind of what I do. Nobody really knows everything. There's confidentiality agreements and things I can't really talk about a lot of it, but it has to do with IT and security, and you know, just with those two things together, you get it. So, finally getting back to this, with work being kind of part of the problem, and then people decide this time of year sometimes that it's a good idea to come into the office sick when they shouldn't. And so usually I don't get that stuff. I have apparently very good immunity and tend to not pick this stuff up. Everybody in the office most of the time can be sick and I won't get it, but not this time. And it really didn't wipe me out. There were days I had enough energy to do this stuff, but then I would have been coughing and sneezing, and I have enough trouble recording the audio for these videos. I'm kind of picky, and I start over again a lot because I'm not happy with how things are going. That would have been even worse if I had to work around a cold. So I waited that out, and then it was Christmas time, and that's fine. That's a good delay. I don't mind that. I knew that was going to happen anyway. I thought I might be on to video 3 by the time it happened, but that's cool. Friends and families, getting together with people means you're not sitting around recording audio for a game video. Then that's, like I said, it's perfectly fine. That's expected. That's good. It's better to spend time with people than it is to sit in front of a computer anyway. So then I thought, well, I'm going to have a little time after Christmas. I'm supposed to be taking some time off. I'll get caught up. And lost one of my days off to problems. Again, 24/7, 365, I'm on call. Can't ignore the phone. Phone starts ringing at 7:30 on my day off, and I was busy pretty much up until about 8 o'clock at night. That happens. And so my day of getting caught up did not happen. And then Friday after Christmas, I had other things I needed to do, did not work on any of this stuff then. So here it is, Saturday, finally getting this done. And I think I'm probably going to manage to get it done today. And hopefully, with some other time off coming up still, I will get a little more caught up. I have a lot more video recorded out of the game. The zoo is quite a bit further along than what you see here. And we'll try to get caught up. So what I'm working on at this point is the indoor rainforest exhibit. From the start of this project, I knew I wanted to have an indoor exhibit somewhere in the zoo. Looking around at the map, I spent some time trying to lay out where things should go. There's a space just inside the entrance, and I decided that might be the best place to put this. It wasn't where I originally was going to put it. It actually might be better than where I originally was going to put it. I was originally going to put it more towards the center of the zoo, but looking at the space inside the entrance, it just occurred to me this might be a better spot for something like this than the center of the zoo. And then I thought, well, perhaps it would make sense story-wise is that this wasn't all built at the same time. Perhaps it was done in phases. So the zoo may have had some funding from a corporate sponsorship to build phase 1, and then later there was a desire and an opportunity with additional funding to add on. And in thinking about how to make it look that way, the best way to handle that was to have different architectural styles for the different phases of the building. Since this is close to the entrance, I thought perhaps phase 1 that might have been built around the same time that the zoo entrance was remodeled, and a decision may have been made to have the style kind of fit in with the entrance since it is so close, and carry some of the same themes that are in the entrance plaza into this building as well and make it really fit in. Just working on the scale there, that little lamppost is just slightly shorter than the people in the game, so it helps me figure out a scale of that doorway, which is too tall, and we'll get around to what we do about that later on. Working over here on laying out the exhibit areas for the second phase. And because this is going to be a little complicated, I thought it'd be easier to kind of lay out paths and start placing exhibits in. So there's a couple animal habitats I'm trying to figure out and place, and a couple of exhibits you see me placing in to this cave, which is supposed to be an artificial cave down there. So trying to keep the animal habitats and animal exhibits in keeping with the rainforest theme. Animals that I selected to use in here are all animals that will be found in a rainforest, and just kind of tweaking some settings here on these exhibits. And again, these paths do change just a little bit. The layout is close to what it ends up being, but I do change it a little as time goes on. I had to make some room for the habitats for my two animal species I was going to have in there. Originally, I did not leave enough room for one of them, so I had to do some tweaking on those paths. Upper level here is supposed to be kind of it's a multi-purpose room. It could be rented out for different things. You could do weddings, whatever in there, corporate events, banquets, things of that nature. So that's what that upper space is going to be. Place the tables there just to give the idea of it might be set up for a banquet of some sort. Working on this interior. This ends up being close to what I ended up with. I changed that stairway a little bit, moved some stuff around. I do that a lot. It takes me a while sometimes to get what I want. I have a general idea, but then when I start building, sometimes what I originally wanted to do just doesn't feel right, and I go back and tweak and change. And so that will change over time, although it's close to what I ended up with. The interest of the rainforest there has not changed at all. I was pretty happy with that from the start. Going to work on how to frame out this doorway a little bit. The scale of these doors, as anybody who's been playing these Planet series for a while knows, sometimes the scale is a bit off. A good two-story doorway is fine sometimes, but it just doesn't make sense for this building, so I'm trying to find some way to bring that more down to scale and make it seem a little more appropriate to what you would expect in something like this. Working on framing this out a bit, and I figure out kind of an awning to go over this as well to help bring the scale down just a little bit later on. Scale is hard, as anybody knows. It's a challenge. You have to get used to it. The tendency, when you first start playing these games, is just to drop in the game pieces and kind of build with what they give you, but then you realize that it throws everything off and it looks way wrong by the time you're done. And you have to get used to adjusting a little bit to kind of bring things down to where they really should be if you're trying to be a little more realistic in your build. We jumped ahead more than I wanted to. I just forgot to record, so I apologize for that. That'll happen with me sometimes. I just don't always think to start recording when I have an idea. I just start playing, and then I realize later on that, oh, I'm not recording. So I have to start, and then you'll get those gaps. It's just sort of the way it is. Sometimes my build process isn't that interesting to watch anyway, and you're really not missing out on much. And there's a lot of fooling around and figuring out with this. I had a general idea what I wanted, but to get it the way I wanted it to look, took some tweaking. The first things I tried, it wasn't perfect, so I had to play around with it just a little bit. We're going for kind of a diamond shape here, and that is why there's that kind of odd gap in there. There's not a better way to fill it than with those art shapes, but it's fine. I ended up being actually pretty happy with that. It would have been nicer if it was glass, but it's okay that it's white. It blends in with the white beams and the windows and things, so it's fine. Yeah, the advanced move is fun. Okay, so moving on. The theory behind this building, as I mentioned, is that it was built in phases. So this particular phase, as we sit here and watch me think, that's what I'm doing here, by the way, I'm thinking. and it does make for an interesting video, but this is what happens. But the theory behind this building is that it was built in phases. So phase 1 was done first, and it's going to have a prairie style look to it. Phase 2 is, I guess you would call it modern, but there is hints of the prairie style in here. And this, I would say an inspiration for this is probably Architect Helmut Jahn, maybe a little bit of I.M. Pei. But we're looking for kind of a modern feel here. Lots of glass, because this is an indoor rainforest. Would want to have plenty of glass. I'm trying to check level here. That's why you see me dropping those window pieces, and they're not going to stay there. Just want to make sure that, because sometimes the wonkiness of the advanced move tool, I wasn't sure I had those beams level, and I did not. And you notice I got that fixed. You probably saw that earlier on when I tried to move them, that they didn't line up right. That was why they weren't level. So fixed that. Another part of the theory here is that we are not going to go for symmetry in anything on this building. There is no symmetry really at all, and you'll see that as it gets further along here. You can kind of get a feel for it now. There's two different sections that look like those kind of gem shapes that I was talking about. They are not on the same level. They are not in the same plane. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one, I wanted to take a massive structure and break it up a bit so it doesn't feel quite so big when you're looking at it, and wanted to create some interest. Symmetry is good sometimes, but let's be honest, sometimes it's really kind of boring, and it feels like a cop-out. Sometimes everybody builds everything too symmetrical and never tries to break out of that a little bit. And let's face it, nature is not symmetrical. I heard I.M. Pei say that once in a no, it wasn't I.M. Pei. It was Frank Gehry. Frank Gehry said that. And he was talking about his architecture, that nature's not symmetrical, so architecture doesn't have to be either. And it's definitely something you see a lot in modern architecture, that it is not trying to be symmetrical. Frank Lloyd Wright oftentimes was not symmetrical, intentionally so. So we aren't going for symmetry here, but we are going for similarities. Working on this roof structure, this is excessive, I know, but I was having too much fun, so I couldn't stop myself. Trying to figure out which kind of glass to use in here. Finally went with one that was more broken up in panes. Originally thought I'd go with a little bit more of an open feel, and I thought, no, I think this would look better with the broken up lights in it. So that's what we ended up doing. You see there's lots of messing around here to try to get it right. This is typical of the way I build. And you'll see this a lot. I do a lot of adjusting, a lot of playing around, a lot of tweaking. Probably a good time to mention that this was 90% well thought out in advance. I had a really good idea how I wanted to put this together. And about 10% of this is having to tweak it after the fact, because I think we probably have all run into this when we're playing these games, that sometimes what we think is going to work just doesn't, and we have to adjust. And there's a little bit of adjusting in this process. So that's kind of what you're seeing here. What I thought I was originally going to do with some of these beams, I decided later just wasn't going to look good. And so now I'm going to go back through and adjust and have it not be quite as complicated as it was going to be. There's going to be a lot more going on in front of those windows. That's why those beams protruded for a while, but I decided that was too much and it wasn't really going to add anything to the building. It was just going to make it look busy. So simplify a little bit and probably improve the final product. Just continue to dress this out a little bit, make it look a little more cohesive, bring everything together a little bit. things aren't lining up exactly for me. I find a way to fix that later on. And so jumping into some real-time video here, and again, this is mostly because I forgot to record. And as I forewarned you, that does happen sometimes. I just have ideas, I get in the game, start playing, and then realize I didn't start recording. And that is what happened here. At this point, the rainforest exhibit is probably 95% done. And so I can just tell you, you didn't miss a whole lot of the build process. You saw the bulk of what it took to get this thing put together. So the idea here, again, 2 phases. Phase 1 tries to look a little bit more like the entrance plaza, although I did tweak the color a little bit, so it's not exactly the same. To make it look like maybe it wasn't built at exactly the same time, but probably close enough together that they stuck with the same style, at least in the front part of the building. Notice I did get my awning over the door to help bring that scale down, put a sign over the top there. I opened up the interior here a little bit and changed the staircase. I felt like the interior was a little too closed in. It felt a little claustrophobic when you first walked in the door. So opening up that stairway has really helped that out a lot. It kind of created a 2-story atrium in that section and lightened up the wall color a little bit, and that really helped make it not feel quite so closed in. And the banquet area all completed with nice windows overlooking the rainforest. Standing on a balcony just outside those windows, guests could take a look around, really get a nice view of things. So it'd be kind of a cool space to have a corporate event or a wedding or a family gathering, whatever. It'd really be kind of fun. So take a little walking tour here, and we'll just go right through the wall because why not? I'm not the best with Tejikam sometimes. For some reason in Planet Zoo, I seem to struggle with it, and I don't know why. I always felt like it was pretty easy in Planet Coaster, but for some reason, it's probably just me, but for some reason I really seem to fight it when I'm trying to do video in Planet Zoo. I had to change that lemur structure just a little bit, that climbing structure. For some reason, the way I originally had it set up, and I don't really understand this, it was constantly telling me those things were escaping. It still happens, not nearly as bad as it was. And I'm not really sure what, like I said, I don't get it. I'm not sure. It was too tall, maybe. I just don't know. I did shorten it down, and that seemed to help. I'm not sure why that matters. They obviously weren't able to escape, but it would tell me they were escaping. And you check it, and they're just standing on the structure. They hadn't gotten out at all. And then it would box them, and I had to unbox the lemurs all the time. So I had to make some changes there. So the path system here is probably going to stay this way. I might try to tweak it some more later. I'm not sure. It's decent. It's very close to what I wanted. Gives people a lot of views, here I'm struggling with Tejikam again, a lot of views of the habitats, a lot of views of the animals, a lot of different places where you can just look around and kind of enjoy things. There's a lot, the balcony there off the banquet area, all these raised walkways. Gives you a lot of different places to stand and enjoy, and just, and you can spend quite a bit of time here, I would think, and not get bored with it. I want to work, look at that, that's crooked. I want to work on some of this still. There's improvements need to be made. 95% there, not 100%, and that's fine. I don't know. For me, nothing's ever 100%. I'm always finding things I can fix, things I can improve, and that's just always been the case with me in these types of games. Nothing's ever really done. It's just done enough for now, and that's kind of where we are. There are areas in here that I'm hoping that in future DLCs we may have some options for new exhibits that can go in. Off to the side here where all this glass is intended to be room to expand this again in the future, depending on what we get for DLC packs and animal exhibit options and things. If it makes sense, this building would be expanded again. Heading down into the lower level cave. Again, this is supposed to be an artificial cave with some exhibits back in here. when I started putting this together, I was thinking that I had recorded this when the lighting was broken, but it turns out that is not the case. I must have done this either before it broke or after they fixed it. As everybody probably knows, there was a period of time when our lighting was not working in the game. But as I shift into night mode here, we see that it is working, so you can see this lit up the way it would appear. There are spiders in the animal exhibits there. They're very hard to find. It's funny, you put all these extras in there to make the animal happy, and then you can't see the animal. I think I spent a little time here trying to find it, and then I give up because I can't find it. It is in there. Every now and then I will see it. Down this way is a path back to a stairway. It's a second way to get back to the upper level. It's just it's utilitarian. It's just there to serve a purpose. There's not much to see with it. May or may not improve that sometime in the future. It just depends. It serves its purpose of helping with flow of traffic. That's going to wrap it up for this video. Hopefully going forward, the gap between these things will become much smaller. There are some unusual circumstances this time that drug it out, as I explained. Gaps for me are not going to be unusual. This is not a career. It's not even a part-time job. It's a hobby. So other things are going to take precedent. That's just the way it is. I'm not unusual in that respect. Other people doing this are doing the same things. When life happens, life happens. We have to tend to those things that are more important. And so gaps are not going to be unusual. This long of a gap, hopefully, is. I've got enough stuff to do a few more of these, probably as many as 5. Try to get caught up, and I'd like to think under the ideal circumstances, I might get a couple more of these out before the new year, and then maybe one more right after. I think I can probably do that, but we'll see how it goes. It all depends on what else happens. But you certainly should not expect it to be 3 weeks. If you've made it clear to the end of this with me today, congratulations. You are a trooper. I do appreciate people sticking with it this long. I know it's not always easy to sit that long through a video about a game, and certainly not from someone who has not done many of these and has a lot of room to improve. Along that note, if there's things that you know that I can do to make these better, please feel free to let me know. I do not mind feedback as long as it's constructive. Would be happy to know what you want to see more of. If you want to hear more about architecture, you want to hear more about how I come up with ideas, my ideas behind design, who I'm inspired by, I'd be happy to talk more about that. Certainly not an expert on animals, but I can even talk more about that if that's what you would like to see. Just let me know. My idea behind putting these out here is to try to make them as interesting as I can. So anything that you can tell me that will help me do that would be very much appreciated. But thank you very much for sticking with it today, and thank you very much for watching. And we will see you next time from Planet Zoo and Zoo Midwest. What I'm working on, what I'm working on? Yeah, I'm working it. It's just going to murk it all up for you. So what I'm working on here is an indoor rain exhibit. Rain exhibit. Oh, shit. Yeah, it's a rain exhibit. Everybody's just going to come inside and get rained on.